It is now 10 o'clock, Thursday, the 1st of June, and it is my great privilege to welcome you all to this, the 11th Beyond Borders Breakfast Debate, and the first in this new series. I am Andrew Lansley. I'm the Strategic Counsel to Lowe Associates here in Brussels, and I and my colleagues at Lowe are honoured to support DG REGIO and the Border Focal Point Network. Can I draw your attention to the fact that the breakfast debate is being recorded so that you are aware of that? Can I ask all our attendees, please, to use the chat function to send in their comments and questions. I know we've had some lively chat alongside our debates on previous occasions, so do please use that, and I will pick up as far as I can those questions with our panelists when we reach that stage of our debate this morning. We have had very interesting previous breakfast debates. I remember, for example, the one on cross-border transport and another which was following the excellent report, EU Border Regions, Living Labs of European Integration. Those previous debates have highlighted both the challenges which need to be overcome in border regions, but also the opportunities for communities when they work across borders. Today we start a new series of these debates and very appropriately we start with the most important people, the citizens in their daily lives, and how can we impact and provide benefits for them. That's the focus of today's discussions. We'll be exploring the relative importance of cross-border cooperation and how best can we engage communities and citizens in realising those opportunities. Now, as we like to do, we want to involve you, all the attendees and participants in our debate, and we're going to begin doing that by asking you one of two questions, poll questions. So I'm going to start with the first question, which I think should come up and you should be able to see. In your opinion, this is the first question, in your opinion, which of the following cross-border cooperation areas has the potential for the biggest positive impact in the daily lives of citizens? Then you have 8 choices. 1, education. 2, public transport. 3, healthcare services. 4, other public services such as childcare. 5, environmental protection. 6, cultural exchange. 7, labour market integration, and 8, risk management. So rather a rather rich list of possibilities there. Can you please, each of you, pick out two of those which you think are areas of cooperation which could have the best positive impact? I know this is a difficult thing to ask you to do. I will announce the results of that poll in a few minutes, and I will ask a further question later on, each of which will feed into our debate and questions later on. But now first, to introduce our discussion, I'm very pleased to introduce, who I know will be very well known to very many of you, Jean Pierre Halkin, head of the team in DG REGIO, who leads on cross-border cooperation on internal borders. Good morning, Jean Pierre. Over to you to introduce our discussion, please.
Well, good morning, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with you to start this new series of breakfast. And as it was already mentioned by Andrew, I'm working in the team in DG REGIO and in the Commission, which is really taking care of the border regions and trying to make sure that we can simplify and make the life of the people living in border regions as easy as possible. Interreg programs have been existing for 30 years, and one may wonder if we have not said everything that has to be said during the last 30 years. And I think that what we have as evidence suggests that no, and not at all. I think that we have a slide to share. I don't see it now, but I don't need it also immediately, but once you share it, it will make easier my presentation. But what we see is that notably through the improvement of the single market, life at the border region has intensified in terms of exchanges which are crossing the border. We speak about people who are crossing the border to work, they cross the border to go to school, they cross the border to access healthcare. And sometimes what we call the life basin, so which is a space in which that you need to access in order to carry on a normal life, is cross-border even without you noticing it, because you go to a hospital and most of the staff in the hospital ask cross the border to come to take their daily work. And recently, the Parliament has made a study on looking at what is the gain that we still can achieve for border region to help the 1/3 of the population which is in border region if we would solve the border obstacle. And you see that the orange is showing the big gain, the blue moderate gain, and the gray, I would say, more lower gain. And what we see is that indeed, in particular in the old member states, the gain are the highest. And this is connected to the fact that the single market has been existing there for a longer time, but also that the border often is not delimited by physical obstacles like a mountainous range. What we also should think about is that Europe, as a whole planet, is undergoing major transformation. You remember that with the von der Leyen Commission, we launched a Green Deal, then it was connected to the Next Generation EU that was helping us to transform our life, to cope with the fact that we need to live within the boundaries of the planet in terms of access to natural resources, but also that we need to be able to cope with the digital transition. Then there was a war in Ukraine and the aggression by Russia, the sanction that has also had tremendous impact on the EU. And whenever you see how the European Union has had to react to that, together with the COVID crisis, we take decisions in Brussels which are defining EU-wide policies, which are sent then to the capital to be translated and adapted to the national context. And what is important is that when you adapt those EU policies to the national context, let's take Germany and Poland, the socio-economic conditions in Germany and Poland are different. So the adaptation, the result will be different. And what we see is that it will lead to tension at the border. And we really need to be sure that as we push forward to have more dynamic Europe, more reactive Europe, that we want to provide a longer term better life for our citizens, the one at border regions are the ones which are most exposed, because the value chains can be changing, because the living conditions, the working conditions are going to be changing. And it means that we need to address that also. We can also think about natural resource management. I mentioned it. We need to live within the boundaries of the planet. It means within the boundaries of a region. And if, for instance, if we speak about water management, you are living in a valley which is crossing a border, for sure it does make sense that whenever you want to manage water scarcity, you do it in the river basin which is crossing the border. It means that for more and more topics, we need, whenever we take decision, to look at decision taken at the capital level, but also taken on the other side of the border. And this is really what we would like to discuss with you, which is the increase of the substance, the content, the topic which are addressed by those cross-border functional area, and how we can do that either by having programs that may help funding projects which are coping with those goals, with those achievements that need to be reached, or by going beyond funding, like we do with the border focal point, with the B solutions, in order to see what are the other elements that we need to address, which are often, at the same time, they are technical, they may be also quite political. So just to say that we feel that the importance of border regions and cross-border regions will be growing in the next years, in the next decade for Europe, and that's what we would like to discuss with you to see if you share that assessment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jean Pierre. I thought that was an excellent introduction to our discussions, and the statistical data in your slide is really interesting. I'm sure that's a slide that will be available after our discussion for others to look at in detail, but it's really an illustration of the potential, really, of the gross value added that can be gained by the removal of those border obstacles. Thank you so much for that introduction. Let me come back to our poll. I could see that some of our colleagues could only vote once, which of course made the choice that much harder. I do apologise if that was the case. What we've secured, however, in terms of a result, is that quite clearly public transport features at the top of the list of the potential for delivering best positive impact, after which other public services such as childcare and labour market integration are next in the list. Obviously, as Jean Pierre was describing, some of these, like environmental protection, clearly feature as well. And I think that gives us an illustration. There's not such a strong recognition of risk management or of healthcare services, or indeed, for that matter, of education. Perhaps, Eithne, when we come to the panel discussion, you'll tell us a bit more about the potential for positive impact through education cooperation. But let's hold those poll results in our minds. We'll return to them during the course of the panel discussion later on. I'm going to move now to launch our second poll, which you'll have an opportunity, or all our attendees will have an opportunity to vote in that, while we listen to 2 video testimonials, which will be coming in a moment. But let me launch the second poll. The questions in our second poll is, in your opinion, how can we best maximise the engagement of citizens in cross-border cooperation? We have 4 choices. 1, involvement in the shaping of internet programmes and their priorities via public consultations. 2, involvement in cross-border community cooperation projects and initiatives such as people to people and through non-governmental organisations. 3, involvement in initiatives organised by local governments. And 4, involvement in designing the strategic and/or action plans of structures of cooperation. For example, European groupings of territorial cooperation, Eurocities, Euroregions, etc. On this occasion, we are intending you only have one choice, I'm afraid. You have to select between those possibilities. We're looking here for what you think would best maximise citizen engagement. Okay, now, while you're thinking and voting, let's hear from 2 people. One, the first, Rebecca Zibule, who is a student from Latvia who's been involved in the Latvian-Lithuanian cooperation collaborations, and I think been involved in cooperation across borders in the Baltic states. So let's hear from Rebecca first. I'm hoping we can hear from Rebecca. Casper, if you'd be kind enough to give us Rebecca's video now. I've lost Rebecca's video. Casper, can we? I heard the music, but there we go.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Ziberna, and I live in Latvia near the Lithuanian border. On a daily basis, I study international relations, and I am an active member of a youth political party here in Latvia. I perceive the border more as an opportunity than a burden or a challenge. For example, pursuing your desired education or career has become a lot easier due to the different opportunities our neighboring countries provide. It is because of the 4 freedoms of EU, including the freedom of movement. Also, traveling has become a lot easier for our neighbors, and because we don't have a border control in Schengen zone. The only challenge I see with having no border control is the lack of monitoring of the flow of narcotics and crime from our neighboring countries. However, I haven't had any personal experience with this, so I cannot comment on it. Although I live near the Lithuanian border, I haven't been to any conferences in Lithuania. I have been to other European Union countries, so I'm impatiently waiting for the Rail Baltica project to be finished, which would connect Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Poland. For example, in a few days I'm going to a conference in Poland, and I have to take an airplane, and which is a lot more expensive and a lot less environmentally friendly comparing to a train. I think the European Union has changed the overall environment of citizens in different regions differently. However, in the case of Baltic region, it has brought us closer. It has integrated us with the rest of Europe, most definitely, and helped us, the post-Soviet countries, to become more independent. And locally, I think the EU funding has helped businesses, many road projects, other projects, help youngsters to be more culturally educated, visiting different countries and exchange programs. And I think military cooperation has become more effective, and we have a larger, broader cooperation than we had before joining the European Union. Also, the European Union Committee of Regions helps administrative regional governments to have more impact and in a broader level, for example, in the European Union, not just in our own countries. And I think in the future, what could be done is the encouragement of employment throughout our neighboring countries because of the lack of professionals for us in educational field. And I think more frequent transportation, especially in tourism season, would be necessary. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. I must say, speaking as a retired politician, she's clearly got a very good grasp of a wide range of issues, rather impressive. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for that perspective from Latvia and Lithuania. Let's take a second testimonial from a politician closer to my own age, Mayor Rodolfo Ziberna, who is the mayor of Gorizia and has been mayor there since 2017. Gorizia is in the Venetia region in Italy and borders Slovenia. Let's hear from Mayor Rodolfo.
Buongiorno a tutti, buon lavoro a tutti. Sono Rodolfo Ziberna, sindaco della città di Gorizia, ho 61 anni, laureato in giurisprudenza. Prima di fare il sindaco, io sono stato eletto nel 2017 e confermato nuovamente sindaco nel 2022. Prima di fare il sindaco provenivo dal pubblico impiego, ero direttore di un ufficio di rilievo regionale. La nostra città ha poco più di 34.000 abitanti e insieme a Nova Gorizia, con cui collaboriamo, ma anche con Szentpétervártó, un altro piccolo comune, abbiamo una conurbazione di circa 70.000 abitanti. È ovvio che ci siamo allargati anche a altri territori contigui, mi riferisco al Collio italiano e al Collio sloveno che si chiama Brda. Lo strumento di cooperazione e coesione territoriale che abbiamo adottato da diversi anni è il GECT, il gruppo europeo di cooperazione territoriale, con cui insieme a Nova Gorizia e Szentpettervetoiba abbiamo destinato 10 milioni di euro, quanti concessi nel settennio precedente, per la promozione del territorio, piste ciclabili, la promozione del fiume Isonzo, ma anche per lo scambio di buone pratiche nell'ambito della sanità. Proviamo per un solo attimo a rovesciare la piramide al vertice della quale stanno Bruxelles e Strasburgo e al cui base stanno invece i comuni e i cittadini. Rovesciamola perché abbiamo toccato con mano l'insufficienza dell'Unione Europea, soprattutto nelle prime fasi del contagio del Covid. Abbiamo visto come Gorizia e Nova Gorizia hanno potuto superare questi momenti solamente grazie alle buone pratiche, solamente grazie al buon senso. Ma è comprensibile, per carità, come a Bruxelles, ma anche a Roma, anche a Lubiana, non si possa conoscere la realtà che noi viviamo, che è fatta di una porzione importante di cittadini che vivono da una parte del confine e lavorano dall'altra parte del confine. Però noi abbiamo vissuto durante il Covid l'erezione di letteralmente nuove frontiere, fatte in cemento e fatte in filo spinato. Importantissimo è stato il conferimento a Nova Gorizia e Gorizia per il 2025 della capitale europea della cultura. Fino a ieri tante associazioni, enti, istituzioni che non si conoscevano, comunque si voltavano le spalle, hanno iniziato a collaborare e a farlo bene. È importante quello che hanno sottolineato i presidenti della Repubblica Italiana e Slovena, perciò il confine che fino a poco tempo fa rappresentava per noi un elemento di divisione, oggi è diventato invece un elemento di coesione. Fare insomma insieme le cose si fanno senza dubbio meglio. Noi intendiamo sfruttare il GECT e il nuovo processo avviato grazie alla Capitale Europea della Cultura per promuovere il territorio, la sanità, i trasporti che in parte già ci sono, la formazione professionale e universitaria, ma anche l'edilizia residenziale e studentesca. Certo, difficoltà ce ne sono state, ci sono e ci saranno, senza dubbio, se non altro perché viviamo in paesi con leggi e con regolamenti diversi. Però la strada dell'Unione Europea non è una delle tante strade, ma è la strada maestra che noi dobbiamo assolutamente percorrere. Però, credetemi, cerchiamo di adottare il più possibile le buone pratiche del territorio per migliorare l'Europa negli interessi dell'Europa stessa.
Well, Mayor Rodolfo, thank you very much for that video testimonial. And I thought it was really very persuasive about the benefits, which you can see where Gorizia and Nova Gorizia, the latter being in Slovenia, the former in Italy, their cooperation is really rather remarkable in that they are twin cities, effectively working together as one to be the European Capital of Culture for 2025. It's a great example of cross-border cooperation. So, and illustrating it in that cultural area, which was one of our possibilities in the first poll, but not the one that got the strongest response. So, let's see now. After those testimonials, you've had an opportunity to vote in the second poll. Let's pick up the results to that. So, involvement in cross-border community cooperation, such as people-to-people and NGOs, goes out way in front as a mechanism for stimulating citizen engagement, gets 58% of our results. Each of the others gets a number of supporters, but at lower levels, in the 15-13% range. So each of the others has some support, but the people-to-people, NGO, community level cooperation gets the vote in our second poll. Now we're going to move into our panel discussions. We have, in addition, three excellent panelists from whom I want to hear first. And I will take some of the questions that I'm receiving and put those questions to our panelists as well as we go through. I'm going to start, if I may, with Ancor Armas Martin. Ancor is an internet volunteer and part of the Secretariat for the South Baltic programme. I wonder, Ancor, if you could tell us something further about the Baltic programme. We've heard a bit from Rebecca in her video testimonial, and I wondered if in doing so, can you give us your perspective on where you think we can deliver the best impact on the daily lives of citizens through our cross-border work. Ancor, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here today. So maybe I can bring some insight into how a citizen, just like myself, could make a positive contribution on cross-border cooperation. So as she perfectly mentioned, I'm an Interreg youth volunteer, which is organized by the Association for European Border Regions. So I'm an IB reporter at the Joint Secretariat of the Interreg South Baltic program. And I mainly focus on the communication and dissemination of the program activities and their benefit on territorial integration on the ground, as well as the solidarity, social inclusion, and the inclusion cooperation dimension. So this is a great opportunity for young citizens to make a positive contribution to gain insight into cross-border cooperation, cohesion policy in a joint secretariat or in a project itself. So I very much recommend this initiative. The Interreg Youth Volunteer have held, I believe, nearly 800 volunteers over the last year. So I very much recommend it. I could also touch upon other initiatives I'm involved in. I recently attended the Council of the Baltic Sea States Youth Ministerial 2023 event in Berlin. So this platform allows young people to articulate their perspective on issues related to the Baltic Sea region and how they affect their communities. And this platform has been followed by the launch of the Baltic Sea Region Forum. And I'm part of the committee of youth representatives for the Baltic Sea Region Forum. So we meet every 2 weeks and we discuss our progress and how we can speed up and try to address the most concerning issues in the Baltic Sea area. So that's another initiative I can recommend to young citizens to be involved, whether you're more into politics, the environment, the social dimension. You're all welcome to participate in this initiative. And lastly, I'm working with my peers on a regional conference of youth in the Baltic Sea region, which is a regional conference organized by YOUNGO. For those who don't know, YOUNGO is the youth constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And we have two main objectives for this regional conference of youth. We want to localize the climate conversation and gather more inputs from the ground, from the local level. And secondly, we want to create a platform for young participants to discuss and develop outputs which fit into national and regional climate policy making and also into the climate negotiations in the Baltic Sea area. In the past, I've also participated in Conference of Youth. That's another interesting initiative if you're into climate change action, and it's a good way to represent your country as a country coordinator, or as a delegate, or as a attendee, and it's a good way to get insight into climate negotiations, whether it's the Conference of Youth or the Conference of Parties. So that's more or less what I've been doing as a young citizen. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you, Ancor. And thank you very much for telling us about all those ways in which young people are getting involved and volunteering. And the numbers are very impressive and the scale of activity is very impressive. Thank you very much indeed. Before we get into the discussion and questions, let's turn now to Eithne Knappitsch. Eithne is Professor of Intercultural Management at Carinthia University. This gives you, I'm sure, Eithne, a great academic as well as practical experience. Could you tell us about how the education sector can realise the benefits of cross-border working, noting that in the first poll it wasn't necessarily as well recognised as in some other areas?
Yeah, surprising. No, well, I come with a natural bias for education as I think improving citizens' lives in all contexts and specifically in the border context. A little bit of background information about myself. So I grew up in a border space on a peninsula at the very top of Ireland, very close to the Northern Ireland border. And having studied applied languages and European studies, I eventually made my way across various European contexts to end up here in Carinthia, which is the southern part of Austria and a wonderful multilingual, multicultural location. So, having come here and really having worked for many years in these competence developments that we talk about in terms of collaboration, communication, cooperation, I was then involved in setting up this degree program in intercultural management. And often people are not really aware of what exactly intercultural management is, but it's very strongly related to the sorts of experiences that we have in border contexts. It's basically a business bachelor, but with a focus on developing multilingual, interculturally competent and diversity aware young leaders. So I think, and just by describing that, this is exactly why I see particularly education as offering amazing potentials in terms of enhancing citizens' lives in border contexts. We talk a lot about, and I know again this is very much another personal bias that I have, but we often talk about how important communication is, how important these intercultural skills are, or they're often described as soft skills. And I always argue that for me, soft is a little too soft, and these are very deep skills that actually we need in order to have effective cooperation and collaboration. And it's the sort of skills that actually we see also with our students who go through the intercultural management program. You can't simply learn by experience without the sorts of additional support in terms of reflection, developing, perspective-taking skills, conflict management skills, and all of these aspects. And I think education and the possibilities we have now, whether it's physical mobility, whether it is virtual mobility, whether we're talking about blended mobility opportunities, that these give us exactly the opportunities that citizens need in terms of engaging with others, having access to broader range of, maybe spectrum of knowledge and skills from other contexts, as well as increasing cultural understanding, etc., etc. So I think that's really why, for me particularly, and at all levels of education, that I see, this is crucial in terms of developing also the mindset for cross-border collaboration.
Eithne, thank you very much indeed. And the skills you're talking about are absolutely the skills young people are going to need in their, not only for leadership, but frankly in their working lives. And is this something that increasingly you're seeing that these things that you're developing in your academic discipline to a sort of, as it were, to a high level of expertise are also being adopted as part of the curriculum for students, whatever their other disciplines might be, that they're all becoming more diversity aware, more environmentally aware, more culturally aware?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is exactly the role that educational institutions should have, is to embed, because these are the sorts of transversal skills that everybody needs in all contexts, within organizations, institutions, as entrepreneurs setting up new businesses, working in politics, in arts, in all contexts. And I think, we're certainly seeing in the field a huge increase in the number of programs that are embedding these competences, also globally, not just in a European context, but across all of their curriculum. So we see sustainability, you know, with its different aspects, this whole idea of how to operate in international environments, internationalization coming into play, and very consciously these sorts of, and it doesn't really matter how you call them, but these diversity competences, intercultural competences, or communication competences. So I think there's a huge increase in that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me bring in Tom now. Tom Voortman is a project officer at EUREGIO. Tom, could you tell us about that work and the projects that you have been working on?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm excited to present you the EUREGIO, also a unique cross-border collaboration in Europe. My name is Tom Voortman, project officer, as Andrew said, and I can tell you a little bit about EUREGIO and its role as well in fostering cooperation in the border area. So first of all, what is the history of the EUREGIO? It all started in 1958 as the first European region. It played really a pioneering role in a cross-border collaboration, and it was really born out of the necessity of cross-border regional development. So the border region in both Germany and the Netherlands often couldn't benefit from national developments due to their location and also their socio-economic situation. So the border municipalities, they strengthened their position by collaborating. And initially the focus was on low threshold and politically supported issues, such as organizing cultural events and sport events and artistic events, or creating cyclepaths. But later, the two countries really joined forces to improve accessibility in the border area and enhance the economy. So maybe it's also good to say what the EUREGIO exactly is. It's a Dutch-German public body that encourages cooperation between the Netherlands and Germany, and it really wants to increase the economic power and the quality of the life in the border area. And in doing so, the border should no longer have a restraining effect. So yeah, the EUREGIO supports municipalities, residents, businesses, and also organizations to take advantages of the opportunities created by the border area. So you can say EUREGIO is a sort of hub or a bridge between Germany and the Netherlands. And yeah, the EUREGIO represents 128 Dutch and German municipalities, cities and districts, and also water boards. And there are 3.4 million people living in the EUREGIO. So it's an area of 13,000 square kilometer. And the structure of the EUREGIO is binational, so the interests of the Dutch and the German members are equally represented. And the EUREGIO Council is the highest political body. And in the EUREGIO Council are problems discussed, solutions are put forward, and also projects are discussed and approved. And there are also 3 committees we have where Interreg projects are dealt with, and they all have their own focus. So there's one committee for social development, one for economy and labor market, and one for sustainable spatial development. And a lot of Interreg projects are being discussed here. And the EUREGIO has several objects also. First of all, we want to enable the strong sub-regions to grow together into a single integrated city region where the borders no longer are hindering all kind of things. You can say that the EUREGIO is kind of a Europe in miniature. And in our region, we really experience Europe every day. So we implement European goals and policies and bring the often more abstract Europe into concrete action among citizens. So we believe that the cross-border connection between people forms the basis for successful cross-border cooperation. And how we do that is, for example, we build networks. So we foster sustainable connections between people. We promote cross-border activities and projects. We represent the interests of the cross-border region. We inform and advise businesses and citizens on the labor market and housing in the neighboring country. We develop projects and we manage projects, and we enable subsidies for cross-border activities and projects. And we, of course, cooperate with other border regions. So there are more EUREGIOs between Germany and the Netherlands. So in conclusion, the EUREGIO is a good example of successful cross-border collaboration. And as discussed, we do this already since 1958 as the first European region. And I think EUREGIO has achieved big steps in economic growth and quality of life, and improved the integration of the German and Dutch area. So that was my pitch about EUREGIO itself first. And
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tom. But I wonder if I could, Tom, also ask you just to look back at our first poll. I mean, clearly, where you are, I think I recall from some of our previous debate discussions, there's been some really good work done on things like public transport connections and the opportunities for people to work across borders. So labour market integration, which feature at the top of our a list of what people say can have the best positive impact. But some of the others, are you reaching into some of those others, the areas of cooperation on education and healthcare, for example, or cultural exchange? These are potential areas for cooperation, which in the poll, people feel at the moment they're not being realised so much. But as you're a very long-standing border cooperation, have you reached into those areas as well? And can you say how they can contribute?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have an employment counseling agency, of course, and they do great work. And also with infrastructure, as you mentioned, we have EUREGIO Rail. Besides that, also cultural exchange is important for us. We have, for example, a EUREGIO youth program. And that's, for example, a platform especially for young people who wants to get actively involved in cross-border cooperation, and thus represent the young voice in the border region. So young people from the Dutch and German border region are invited every year to present their ideas and wishes for a borderless region. They exchange ideas, they talk and work together. And the participants, for example, work out different project ideas in groups, and which they also pitch to an expert Dutch-German jury. And the winning group, for example, is given an opportunity to further develop and implement their idea. And we guide these kinds of ideas. So that's an example of cultural exchange for people. We also have all kind of cultural projects going on regarding sports. You can also ask for small amounts of money for cultural exchanges. For example, when you want to organize a Dutch-German football event, or if you want to organize art events, you can also apply for subsidies for those kind of things. And we also guide those processes.
Thank you, Tom. That's really interesting. That's a very useful example to hear about. Thank you for that. Eithne, there's a question in the chat, which you may be able to see, which is about as it were, across Europe, there are regional differences in the extent to which intercultural management is being able to be achieved. I just wonder, I mean, we heard from Mayor Rodolfo, if you remember, and it is a fantastic example, working together across the Slovenia-Italy border, Gorizia and Nova Gorizia to be European Capital Culture in 2025. But of course, they have a very long cultural tradition that they share. Are there areas where sometimes these border regions, the two sides of the borders, actually don't necessarily share the same degree of cultural cohesion? And we have to work much harder, perhaps, at creating what's effectively a shared European culture?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And I think it's one I could talk about for a very long time, and I'll try and limit it. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we have to be aware of is that every context at every border is very specific. So it's a different combination of people, culture, and the actual context involved, which means that the whole process of developing maybe, you know, the sorts of competences and skills we talk about is different, or how we might approach them is different depending on the, you know, the specific geographic nature of those borders. What I would say is, and here we're about a 2-hour drive from Gorizita, Nova Gorizita, and just by way of an example, we do a lot of experiential student learning projects in the Alps-Adriatic region. But a couple of years ago, before COVID, we had a group of professionals who were part-time students, 29 of them in the group, and we said, okay, we're going to take you on an experiential, learning cross-border business lab, and we'll work in Slovenia. How many people have, regular contact experience in the past working with individuals? And in the group of 29, there were 2 people. And alternatively, people in terms of the experience, and we're talking about the borders 15 minutes away. It's a 15 minutes drive, albeit over a mountain or, through a tunnel, which takes a lot longer. But actually, the context and the experience of the other regions wasn't there. And we're talking about people who are, embedded in the labour market, working in businesses locally. And the impact of just simply organising an experiential learning opportunity like that has a massive impact on the awareness and competency development. So I would say that all of the border situations, of course, are very different, and some have more developed, also programs that cover aspects of communication, collaboration, interaction. But I would still say that there are certain, from my perspective, it's absolutely essential that the experiential component is there and the learning transfer aspect. So this is the reflective component. And when we talk about different contexts, we have totally different views of what, reflection is, what learning transfer is. Or if we talk about, the business context, if I see organizations collaborating, working together, everybody agrees trust is important. Great, we're on the same page. We all, value trust. But actually going deeper and thinking about what trust means and how it's developed and built in specific contexts, and be able to ask the questions and to develop the regular deep listening and learning skills that we need to have mutual understanding and mutual learning from each other. I think we still tend to deal with that at a relatively superficial level.
Thank you very much. And I can see on the chat that we've got somebody very much agreeing with you about the value of these exchanges and the experiential benefits that flow from that. So I can see that on the chat. Ancor, can I just turn to you for a moment? Because in the second poll, we of course rather artificially asked people to distinguish between people-to-people kind of NGO and community level cooperation, and distinguishing that from the mechanisms of cooperation like the strategic plans or the European groups for territorial cooperation. Mayor Rodolfo referred to how they were working through a European group for territorial cooperation. I just wonder if you could tell us how with your experience, clearly you're operating at both levels. How do you mesh those things together? How do you realise the benefits of the community level cooperation, meshing that together with some of the institutional cooperation?
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I think I try to adopt a dual perspective. So now from the Joint Secretary of the South Baltic Program, I tend to adopt a more like a top-down approach, whereas when I attend those events I mentioned before, it's more a bottom-up approach. So I get to experience that dual perspective, and that's how I personally measure that all the strategies and projects we're working on in the South Baltic region, they are actually having an impact at local level, and they're contributing to accelerate and contribute to sustainable development, whereas it's in sustainable transport, tourism, green technology, circular economy. We have different priorities and program measures. So we have a wide scope of options for partners, organizations, and beneficiaries to actually make a contribution in various ways.
Ancor, given what you were describing and the many young people who are getting involved, not least because they think they can contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation, presumably they are working together on many local projects, but they want to see institutional focus on those issues as well. And if you remember in the first poll, we saw environmental protection featured, but not top of the list. But actually, environmental protection for many of the border areas is one of the areas where the potential benefits are very significant, aren't they? Are you seeing that in your work in the Baltic Sea?
Yeah, we're receiving a large amount of projects in circular economy, so that can tell us that it's an ongoing threat for our society. So we're expecting to receive even more projects on climate change mitigation, adaptation, the circular economy. So we know that there's probably lack of information, and a lot of institutions are maybe taking for granted climate change, for example. But we know that the public is aware of the impacts that they could experience in the upcoming years. So that's a hot topic that we're working on, and we will receive a lot of application forms on climate change adaptation and mitigation.
Thank you, Tom. Can I bring you in on that as well? That clearly there's a lot of support for the community level and sort of people-to-people level cooperation, but of course it has to be supported by institutions. Are you seeing in EUREGIO examples of both, and how are they interacting between the two? Are the NGOs and the community level groups able to bring forward proposals for cross-border work to the institutions that you represent? Sorry, Tom, you're muted at the moment, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Beginner's mistake. Yeah, there's definitely a bottom-up approach also in our border area. So initiatives are being started by companies and small organizations, and then we see several. We see, for example, with the topic hydrogen, we see it nowadays that a lot of letters of intents are being signed, and a lot of events are being organized for hydrogen, for more cooperation. And because Germany and the Netherlands, they have different approaches to the topic hydrogen, and you see they combine their forces, and then also governments and institutions also are getting along with the smaller initiatives and organizations. And then a big topic is hydrogen, and also circularity needs to be approached all together, of course. It's really definitely a bottom-up approach also in our border area. And a big topic as hydrogen needs to be approached like that, I think. And we need to exchange different perspectives on that topic, and so we can move along and we can approach together this big challenge we have currently.
Thank you, Tom. That's a really interesting example, because, of course, with some of the climate change mitigation and the switch to new technologies, new infrastructure can be put in place, and that infrastructure doesn't have to live within borders in the way that some of the old infrastructure did, and that sometimes we have to combat the obstacles created by the historic infrastructure that we have created in years past.
It's important to have the 360-degree perspective on a lot of things, and you see in a border area a lot of 180-degree perspective. So a lot of initiatives are being created, and then they're not looking over the border, and there needs to be definitely a more 360 perspective from the German side and from the Dutch side.
I've got just a few minutes left. I'm going to come to Ricardo just to help wrap it up a minute, who I think is contributing to the chat discussion about the nature of European citizenship. But Eithne, before we close, I just wanted to ask you one thing. There's a reference in the chat to the creation of a cross-border civil society. I mean, in this modern world where political identity is terribly important, are we seeing the emergence of a political identity which is a cross-border identity as well as a European one? Or when we really talk about working across borders, are we really talking about people embracing their European identity?
Yeah, I think this is a difficult question. I'm sure there are a lot of different perspectives on it. I'm not sure about to what extent there is really a conscious cross-border identity as such. However, when we do talk about it, sometimes it is also embedded in, discussions about, political identity. What does that mean? I'm not sure that we have a common, let's say, a common conscious understanding of what it means to be a citizen in a cross-border context. And I absolutely agree with Ricardo's point here that, living in the border position in this sort of space that's in between and somehow liminal, it gives us an opportunity to engage and experience, all forms of difference, all forms of, diversity of context, education, perspectives, methodologies, etc. But I'm not sure we make the step generally of moving forward with that, recognizing what it means actually for us in terms of all of the positive opportunities, also of course some of the challenges, and then transferring that into this very wonderful idea of what it should mean to be a European citizen or a cross-border citizen. I'm not sure that generally we have that positive common connotation with cross-border identity.
Thank you, Eithne. But perhaps that's exactly what we're building in the work that we've heard described today. Ricardo, could I come to you? Many thanks to the panelists this morning. They've been great. Can I ask you, perhaps, if you'd kindly say what you think are maybe one or two of the key takeouts from our very useful, interesting discussion this morning?
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be in this debate. It's always a pleasure because we always see so many different perspectives. We should not forget about the title today. The title is How Can We Contribute to Improve Cross-Border Citizens? It links what I'd always saying, that people feel belonging to a territory. The answer to that question, I've always said, well, to improve life of cross-border citizens, we need to allow them to explore their natural territory. And this is it. If one is allowed, not hampered, not prohibited from exploring their natural territory, one can enhance its life conditions. And then the question on citizenship becomes on what is my natural territory. I remember a few years ago I was living in a border, and I did have the feeling that just across the border, it was closer to me in cultural terms than the most further away place in my home country. So I was living in Elvas in Portugal, and I felt more at home in Badajoz, Spain, just across the border, than I did in Porto, further away in my own country. This natural territory, this identity, is what we need people to allow people to explore. Then there's a second element on the title of today. It's the we. How can we improve border citizens' lives? Who is we? And in this we, I see two big groups. One is we, the institutions, we, the organizations, be those institutions legal policy makers, be those institutions European level, national level, regional level, whatever. The other one is we, the individuals, we, the citizens. As Dirk was saying very correctly, we, the people, and not we, the citizens. People is much wider, much broader than citizens. And I see two different answers here. For we, the institutions, we need to ensure that the conditions are met to allow people to develop. That's the commitment we have on DG REGIO side. From REGIO, from the European Commission regional policy, what we are trying to create is the tools. We are committed to create the tools to allow border regions to flourish without being discriminated vis-à-vis other territories. So to solve border obstacles, to have legal tools in that sense, the ECBM proposal is one example. To have financial possibilities, the Interreg is clearly delivering cross-border solutions. But on the other side, we also have we, the people. And we, the people, sometimes also have a major role to play. And sometimes it's very easy to say those other people are not solving my problem, but I also have a role in solving my problem. I also have a role in raising awareness of those problems. I also have a role to make sure that those problems can be solved, can be analyzed, can be triggered. I have a role in participating in peer-to-people projects. I have a role in engaging, like Ancor is engaging in Ivy, like Tom is engaging in EUREGIO. The major solutions will come from that engagement, and a lot from raising awareness to national level. When we feel in the border region there is an obstacle, I am not allowed to do this or that. The first step to take is, let's analyze it why. Let's make it heard. Let's talk to our policymakers. Let's talk to our representatives, and let's make it heard. I end up with just one invitation. I left there the link for B-Solutions. B-Solutions is a tool that we made available, allowing the border region stakeholders to raise awareness and to assess what are the impediments in a certain type of interaction. What is the legal route, the legal route of one cross-border obstacle? I invite you everyone to participate in this. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much. It's always an amazing debate.
Thank you, Ricardo, and thanks for those insights too. And thank you to you and your colleagues at DG REGIO for the way in which you help to lead and sponsor these debates and the work through the Border Focal Point Network. I just remind everybody of the value of connecting up through the website and keeping close touch with each other. The chat is, as ever, offering us opportunities for links and information that people are sharing. Can I say a very big thank you to our presenters this morning, all of whom gave us really good insights and some very good responses to our questions. Thank you very much to Eithne, to Tom, and to Ancor. Thank you to my team and colleagues at Lowe, Vilta and Casper, but most of all, thank you to all of you for being participants and staying with us just beyond 11 o'clock. We promised to finish at 11, so we're a little bit over, but you've kindly stayed with us to listen to these fascinating insights about how we can improve the daily lives of citizens in cross-border regions. I think there was some real meat in the discussion and some real opportunities for people to think about examples for them to take away and work on, and contacts and networks that people can use to find some of the very best examples across Europe and use them themselves in their own cross-border areas. Thank you all very much indeed. Have a very good day. Sadly, we have to finish now, but many thanks to you all for your participation this morning. Thank you and have a very good day.